Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside the OC, a podcast dedicated entirely to the USBC Open Championships. My name is Matt Cannizzaro, joined by my associate, Daniel Farish. Daniel, how are you and how are things in Kentucky today?
Things are going very well. I am very excited for this podcast.
All right. We are joined today by past champion, 2001 regular singles champ, and our current lane extraordinaire, Nick Hoagland. We'll get into all of that and much more. We're a little bit more in Daniel's wheelhouse as far as the technological side of things and lane play and such. So I know he'll have a lot to add today as well. Nick, welcome. How are things in Indiana today?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It's fun to watch you do this podcast, and I'm glad to be here. It's cold and rainy. Feels like it should be a great day to go bowling, but I'll just have to set up the plastic pins here in my house and knock them over.
Well, excellent. We're glad to have you. We know you're going to have some great insight about not just the Open Championships, but just lanes in general, lane maintenance. We'll talk about procedures, how we do things at the OC, and some of your other responsibilities as the lead developer and lane maintenance guy for USBC and all of our championship events, as well as the PWBA. And, of course, looking forward to talking about your days on the lanes as well, your standout performances at the OC and in college bowling as well, a couple times, actually. So, with that said, Daniel Farish, let's grill Nick Hoagland.
All right, where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the lane play and the oil pattern guru that he is, or do we want to start with – we'll start with Nick's own bowling career. I think that's a good place to start because before you got hot and heavy into the business, behind the scenes and in front of the lane machine, you were known for throwing the rock pretty well. Matt mentioned you were a collegiate bowler in two different eras. So first I want to ask you about that. Your first stint in collegiate bowling and then your second stint almost 10 years later.
Yeah, I took a year off when I was a junior and almost didn't bowl the whole year. And so I had a year eligibility left when I went to grad school while I was working full time. So that was interesting. So I would say that the difference between bowling in 96, 97, 98 versus 2008 is you could see the professionalism of the teams grow. Club sport teams were the predominant facet of college bowling back when I bowled the first time. And then in the mid-2000s, you started to see more professional teams, I'd call it, stretching, exercising, coaching. And you could just see it build now, even into 2020, where club teams are just, it's different. It's a different era in collegiate bowling. So I've been fortunate enough to see that transition. And I think where we're at today is the best.
So I'm going to get this out of the way real quick. I do have a bone to pick with you. The 2007-2008 collegiate season, your Indiana University team knocked my Lindenwood team out of the contenders bracket at the 2008 ITCs. And all I knew about you at that point was that Indiana had some old guy bowling for them that bowled a previous decade, and he's the reason we lost. That's all I knew about you at that point.
Yeah, I think I would have been what year was that?
2008.
I think I bowled, so 2008. So I probably was I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real cool story about the ITCs that the year was, I was in Wichita, and I actually had flown to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to interview for the USBC Board of Directors. I applied for that and flew from South Carolina to through O'Hare to Wichita the same night as the banquet, the Night of Champions banquet. And of course, guess whose luggage didn't show up? Mine. So I'm in a T-shirt, Hard Rock Cafe T-shirt, jeans and sneakers, and put on Adam Bischoff's sport coat because he was the only guy, as big as me. Right. And went on the stage. And there's a picture of it. I'm standing next to Dan McClellan, and I forget who else was on the stage. And there's four guys dressed to the nines, and there's me in my T-shirt.
So let me ask, all kidding aside, what was it like going back to college and bowling as a 30-something-year-old with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds? What was it like trying to get back into that frame of mind?
The best way I can describe it is that I was like a player coach, right? we had a coach, but by that time I had oiled lanes on the PBA tour. I'd watched the best bowlers in the world. I'd talked to the best coaches, and I wasn't clearly as sharp as I was or as good a shape as I was the first time around, right? So I had to rely on my team and maybe a better captain. I remember when I was a freshman and sophomore, I wanted to bowl fifth all the time on some ego trip. And then when we bowled the second time around, man, I'd move that roster. If some guy was hot, Ryan Lubosh was one of my teammates. If he was hot, he's going fifth. And I just learned my team better. When the lanes got tough, I put Tim in. He was the grinder, so he could make a spare so we didn't have two donut holes in second and third position. So I was a better manager of our team. I don't think our talent was as good as when I was an undergrad. That's a fair statement. But we just were a better team. And we bowled well, and obviously knocked that Lindenwood team out. No.
Yeah.
Is it Lindenwood we knocked out?
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In the contenders bracket. Yeah.
Yeah.
We lost to Fresno. You guys lost to, I just looked it up.
Okay.
I forget who you guys lost to in the first round, and then you all knocked us out in the contenders bracket.
You're welcome.
Well, I mean, we didn't have any All-Americans on our team. You guys had a stud, so I can't, we were shorthanded. So we'll fast forward past your first stint in college. The first year you bowled,
which I was there for that one, by the way. That was my stint.
Oh yeah,
it
was. Yeah. So did you all ever come head to head?
Probably not. Things were a little bit different back then. That was really before the Baker way took over the way that it has. But we did have some good times back then for sure. As Nick said, college bowling has evolved over the last 10 or 20 years, and we have some different memories. All fond, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to your first year at the Open Championships, 1998, in the stadium in Reno. Your first year out, you shoot 2060. That's a pretty good number for a first year participant at the OC. What were your thoughts going into that event? Did you understand, how big the event was, the prestige of it? Were you blinded a little bit by it, or did you just go in calm and relaxed and put up a huge number?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it was 98. I was collegiate player of the year that year, so that was probably one of the best years I had bowling. All I remember is that going the first time, I was in awe of the stadium, which I can say even walking into it last month, I'm still in awe of the stadium. I remember that everyone told me the lanes are going to be hard, and the lanes still are hard. And I don't think I grasped the history of the tournament, until you walk through the concourse and see the champions' names and really understand what the Eagle is. It was a big tournament to me then. I don't remember what I bowled in team. I don't think it was very good. I think I might have bowled in the mid-high fives, low sixes.
635.
635. We bowled second shift. So back then, team event was 7:30, 10:30-ish. And so the 10:30 squad was burn. It wasn't, and the lanes were hooking. I just feel really nervous. And then the next day, we bowled the 440 doubles, which was the third shift, the double burn. But we bowled on the high end of the stadium, and no one bowled on the pair the first squad at 7 a.m. So we only had a single burn, and they were just beautiful. I mean, they could not have been better. I don't know who bowled on our lanes before, but in those days, luck was a bigger factor in the tournament. Who'd you follow? And maybe you didn't get on the burn squad because the entries were sold out and you had to bowl fresh. So today how we do it, where everyone gets the same shot, to me is much fairer.
Now, did you guys go in a little bit early to see who had bowled on that pair of the squad before?
I think we peaked. I was 20, and I think I was trying to, gamble at some point. Well, I'm not allowed. Just being a 20-year-old in college and being
in Reno
with my friends. I don't think I thought about those things. I just went, and back then that was the thing. You just go bowl. I don't know what the pattern was. I just got my balls and used my talent and bowl.
Now we fast forward 3 years, and this event has been going on for, it'll be 117 years this year. There are a lot of players who have won Eagles, but the number of players who have not is exponentially higher. And in 2001, back in the stadium, back in Reno, is when you won your first and only Eagle up to this point. You shot 798 in singles, and what gets me about this is that you struggled in team, you struggled in doubles, and then all of a sudden things click. So I want to ask you first, if thinking back this far, what your emotions were like after struggling the first block and then getting to the next day and struggling in the second block, and then all of a sudden things just click and you're 200 pins above in singles what you were in doubles. You shot 798. That number held up to win. But what was it like after those first two blocks, having struggled so much?
Well, the backstory is this. That's the year I didn't bowl in college. So if you think about the bowling season, right, I didn't think I picked up a ball from May or June until December. So in January, so second semester, I picked up a ball. Someone needed me to sub, and I went and subbed in Bloomington at Classic Lanes. And here, find out my friend Jeff Clark can't go to nationals, and they're going in February. We went early February, and so they needed someone to bowl. I said, "Oh, okay, I'll bowl." So I practiced a little bit, but I wasn't in what we call top shape, competitive shape, but I was mentally fresh because I hadn't bowled for a while. And we flew out there, and we bowled on 31 and 2 for team event, for doubles, which is not next to the walkway, the pair over one to the right. Struggled, terrible. And years later, we'd find out why. The topography on the old lanes there was completely different. So the one lane would basically had a cliff into the gutter. The other lane would ricochet back. So we switched. In those days, you switched pairs, right? So we went to 29 and 30. I remember just moving back on the approach like a half a foot, like an old school adjustment, and it all just clicked. And I bowled 243, I think, with a washout the first game, and then 279, 276. And what I remember, though, is I had no less than 7 messengers across the deck to hit the 10 out. The head pin hit the 10 out on the twister pins, which, as you guys know, that is not an easy feat. And so I bowled it on 29 and 30. I'm pretty sure the squad had 8 lanes on it. I'm pretty sure I made maybe $200 in brackets because no one was there. It was like a Wednesday afternoon in February. There's no one in the building. And so that score lasted for 4 months.
What was that wait like?
It was horrible because I'd dial in on the Indiana University modem internet from my apartment, and the screen would like click, 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 click. And I'd just check every day to see if anyone beat me. So no one bowled 800 in singles that year. 798 won.
So when you got that phone call, the announcement that you'd won the Eagle at such a young age, what was your initial reaction, your initial thought?
It's really an odd one because I was in the process of going to work for the PBA at the time, and so I'd made the decision not to bowl competitively anymore. And so it was sort of surreal. Like I accomplished this. I didn't realize that I was either the youngest or one of the youngest to win it, to win the singles at the time. I just think when you're 21, I just didn't think about that stuff. So today, I clearly have much more appreciation for it, and I will be very proud when someday I take my daughter and my son to walk through the OC and they can see their dad's name. So today it means a lot more than it did, winning at such a young age.
So still almost, 20 years removed from that, you go to both the Open Championships, you see that Eagle next to your name. You just smile. Just that's the thought.
It's just pride. It's given me the platform in bowling to do what I do today, whether it was work for the PBA or do what I do for USBC. There's a credibility there behind someone who's won an Eagle title. Everyone knows what that means. And so, it's given me the ability to do other things in bowling that the performance allows me to do today.
Now, that's kind of what I want to ask about is a lot of people these days, they might not, the younger generation, when I say a lot of people, they don't know you as a former Eagle winner or, former 2-time All-American in college bowling. They know you as the lane pattern guy. And I want to talk about the opportunities that those experiences on the lanes may have given you or provided you off the lanes. You mentioned you went to work for the PBA in the mid-2000s out of college. What was your role there, and what exactly did you do?
Yeah, I had an unbelievable experience at the PBA. I was in grad school, and they had a position available for assistant tournament director, and I applied for it and got a call from Kirk von Kruger and got the job after interviewing. And if you ask him today, one of the main reasons I got the job is because of my lane maintenance background, because I had been doing lanes for the Midwest PBA region in college, and I've always been interested in it. And so I went to work for them as assistant tournament director right when the tour was bought by the Seattle Investment Group in 2001, and was able to work on the tour for 4 years in a variety of roles, most notably known for creating the animal patterns, the flat U.S. Open pattern, the 50-foot TSC pattern, all those types, but also ran tournaments with Kirk, who's still a great mentor today, helped build arena events, a Japan Cup, and ran our Pro-Am and ticket business, did the schedule for several years, organized a schedule, which was really fun to do. So great experience, and all the while learning business from Steve Miller and Fred Schreier and Kirk von Kruger, while getting to watch the best bowlers in the world, was really an unbelievable experience.
All right, before I ask any more about lane patterns, Matt, you've been around the OC. We know this for a decade and a half. You've seen guys like Nick come through. You weren't there for his Eagle win, but what memories do you have from Nick from the OC? 2000s, 2010s, outside of lane maintenance, but maybe the competitive side or just off the lanes.
Well, first I want to take a look back at Nick's record here, and just to point out, to his teammates, Nick actually averages nearly 10 pins higher in singles than he does in doubles or team.
I'm the only child. That makes sense.
He followed up that Eagle winning performance with a run at 300 at the Open Championships. Another thing, very rare, of course, as we know, and very special. I just want to ask about that moment. 299 at the OC has to be so awesome and so heartbreaking at the same time. Can you just run us through that final frame, and especially coming off that Eagle year? I imagine already in singles, already pretty nervous. Followed the 798 with 764. But what a phenomenal 6 games.
Yeah, I had a good run. Completely different circumstances, was in Billings, and I'd moved to Seattle to work for the PBA, had worked all year. And again, I haven't bowled much, and got to bowl with Hugh Miller, Roger LeClaire. I can't remember who else was on the team. Maybe Adam Barta. At some point we bowled together. But I was the only guy bowling. We were the last pair done. And I remember striking the 11th one and wanting to get to 300. I think I left a 4-pin, and they took a picture. The paper was there. Someone was there from Billings, and they have a picture of me with a Hawaiian shirt on and spiked.
Which we have, by the way.
Do you have it? Yeah. But the real story is the night before, our team finished, I think, 3rd or 4th that year, and we should have won. We had it really going in the 10th frame, and 3 of us opened in the 10th frame. I know I 4-9'd, and we lost. We finished 3rd or 4th, and that year is a team from Indiana won. The Bruno's Pizza team from Lafayette was the champion. So I more remember that tournament for losing the title and team, because we had it in the palm of our hands.
Well, now you've had the years, and we've had some years to talk at the Open Championships, and as you said, you're starting to have a different viewpoint and appreciation for the history and the prestige, and as your children get older as well, as you see the event from a different perspective now, from the lane side, that 2002 event was very high scoring, record setting at the time. We had a record number of perfect games, and now that's something, as we transition to your current role in the bowling world, 64 300 games is unheard of. That's phenomenal. I mean, nothing away from those accomplishments, and it had to be a special and memorable event. But now it's your job to control that environment a little bit differently. And, of course, the pattern's different every year. At that time, just one oil pattern. A lot of things have changed. So we transitioned the next year, as a matter of fact, to fresh oil for every team event. And then a decade later, fresh oil for every squad. And then we went to the 2 oil patterns. So as with everything in our sport, in our event, things have evolved. And now you really play a huge role in the scoring environment, and the folks that go out there and bowl well truly have earned their titles at the Open Championships. I know Daniel has some hard-hitting questions as well about the process and the thought process and just how things happen from day to day at the Open Championships as well.
Yeah, I'd say before even Daniel asked, it is an absolute honor and privilege to be able to work and make these decisions. They're not taken lightly. It's not just on a whim, hey, this is what Hoagland wants to do. It is a year-long effort, not just for the OC, for all of our championships, and something that I take very seriously. There's over 100 years of tradition on these events, and I don't want to be the one responsible for messing it up. So we work hard and try to do the right things.
Well, and each year, of course, a new challenge or two new challenges with the double patterns. And some years going to be a little bit higher scoring, some years
Mhm.
a little bit more challenging. I think that's part of the variety, part of the excitement of the Open Championships. You don't know what that challenge is going to be. And the goal, of course, is to go out there and combat that the best way that you can. And again, if you find success, you will have definitely earned it.
Yeah, each environment changes, so it'd be real easy for us to say, oh, we bowled at the South Point Plaza in 2 years ago, so we're not going to test this year. That's crazy. That lane surface is now 2 years different. We level the lanes every time we bowl, and so all the competitors should know that there's not a ball going down the lane for the tournament until we've tested them on site. It's not sitting at a computer in a lab and putting a pattern out. It's actually taking designs, bowling on them several times, testing different versions, looking at the past year's pace, the past year's scores, seeing comments from our customers in the marketplace, because we survey them as to what they like and don't like, including the lane conditions. So it's all that taken into account with guidance from leadership on how we should try to move forward every year.
So as you enter into let's say a new venue, a building you haven't been to before, whether it's a convention center type setting for the Open Championships or just a bowling center you haven't been to, what steps are taken to determine what type of lane condition you're going to want for the event, maybe outside of scoring pace, but looking at topography or other factors? What comes into play when you're trying to figure out how to build a tough, a challenging pattern for that particular bowling center? Yeah,
it's a great question, and it has to do with first of all, what event are we bowling? So I think this is the OC podcast, so we'll go into the OC. So it's the Open Championships, which have 100+ years of history behind them. There's a certain toughness to the lanes that's been in the fabric of the tournament throughout its history. There may be ebbs and flows. There might be a year that's higher scoring, 2002, right? There may be a year that's lower scoring, but everyone knows that you're going to have to earn that eagle. So that's number one. Second is the venue. And so some years we go into a new build. Sometimes we're going into an existing structure, but sometimes that existing structure has new lanes. So the National Bowling Stadium, I believe, is on their third set of lanes, maybe fourth, which have all been level. So every single year, we have to go in and see what changes have been made to the lane surface from a ball motion standpoint. Because, like the South Point specifically, we're not the only tournament there. Mm-hmm. They're hosting events year round. So that lane surface is constantly changing. So I'll take a bank of patterns in. I would say that I test, depending on the event, I'll take anywhere from 3 to 20 patterns to an event. Just depends. It also depends on what happened the years prior. Do we have what we define as a successful tournament from whether it's a scoring pace, whether it's from customer feedback? How did we do the year before? If we did well and our customers are happy, then I think that we're going to most of the time stick with the game plan we've maybe used before. And full transparency, I'm not giving away any information on here that's not in the public domain. But if you go to our website and you specifically pull up the team event patterns for the last 4 or 5 years, print them out, put them on your screen, and look at them, you're going to see they're pretty close, Daniel. I mean, I'm not giving away anything because they could be completely different this year. But if you look at that over the past 5 years, you're going to see that team event pattern is a foot longer, a foot shorter. You might have a little bit more oil, a little less oil. But every year you see folks that come back, go, man, they were really different this year. And that's because of the building. It's because of the surface. It's because of who's bowling on their pair with them. And so, in designing the pattern specifically for the OC, we take all of those factors into account and test on site before anyone throws a ball.
Now, I'm going to ask this next question for our viewers who are not part of what I call the 5%. The 5% of players are the 5% that are eagle chasers, eagle hunters. Mm-hmm. They book 235 plus in their leagues. They know a lot of this stuff, but a majority of the bowlers at the Open Championships, they don't know all that because they don't have to. They don't compete at that level. So the question is, let's say you ran a pattern at South Point last year, and let's say that everything, scoring pace, honor score numbers, lead numbers, all that was perfect. It's not as simple as copy and pasting those exact same oil pattern numbers when we go back in 2021.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a fresh canvas. I mean, I have the templates we've used in the past, but I'll bring those with me that as sort of placebo patterns that I'll test on just to see, hey, I'm going to throw the Vegas pattern in from 2 years ago. I know how that reacted. Let's see how this rolls at the stadium, right? But no, it's a completely fresh canvas every year as to what we're trying to accomplish. And we do take our customers' feedback very significantly, and that's all three divisions. It's not just the guy averaging 230. In fact, the meat of the tournament are those bowlers in that new division. The 180 to 210 average bowler who I think left us for a few years and now have come back as our entries continue to grow. And for them, we want to provide a challenging environment against their peers. And the thing that we want to get across, if they're not into the technical aspects of the ball motion, what I try to get across to all of our customers is that you can be assured that when you bowl in April, let's use this year's example, hopefully when you bowl in September at the Open Championship, that when you're bowling on that team pattern, that the team in November is bowling on the exact same oil pattern, and that you can trust that you have a fair and equal chance to win a title at the Open Championships. There's nothing more important to us than the integrity of the competition, and by making sure that everyone bowls on the same oil pattern. So for the average bowler who's coming out there, I want them to understand that you don't have to know oil patterns to feel confident that you have an equal chance of winning, that we're taking those precautions seriously.
Well, and that's a great point. There's a lot more to it than just the lane maintenance crew going out there and putting a machine down and pushing a button. And as far as checking, double checking, testing, tracking, talk about some of the process in that regard and what happens squad to squad and day to day to make sure that integrity is protected.
Yeah, it's a great question, and all the stuff that I'm going to talk about here is all on our Open Championships webpage on FAQ section, where you can view all these documents. And we even did a video last year to sort of physically show some of the checks and balances. So I encourage folks to look at that. But every day, the machines are tested, their volumes are tested. What that means is we're verifying to make sure that when we run a pattern that it's putting out the same amount of oil. That's very important to do. We take tapes, every squad, which measure the amount of oil. All of the machines have pass-coded security clearance. So in fact, when we put the patterns in the machines, which I do myself, we put security codes in so that even the lane maintenance staff who's running the lanes at the Open Championship, the actual guys hitting the buttons, do not know what the oil pattern is. There are 5 people in the world that know what the oil pattern is when we do this. We have checklists that the lane maintenance staff validates every squad, and then is revalidated by a supporting function. So the folks working the control desk may check the machine as well to make sure we're running the right pattern. All of these checks are documented on paperwork and submitted on our website. You can even see which of the 4 or 5 oiling machines oiled your lanes, the machine number, what time we started, what time we stopped. Every piece of information that would make you feel comfortable that you have an equal chance of winning is all available to the public before or after they bowl, depending on the time of the year.
The OC, let's say, runs from day 1 to day 120. We hear bowlers talk about the lanes played differently in March than they played in June, and they're basing that on scoring pace. That's all they really can base it on, because you only get to bowl it once. Why would a pattern play differently in March on day 20 than it will in July on day 120?
Great question. I think if we're bowling in a bowling center, I'd put more stock into temperature, humidity, environmental factors. However, when we bowl at the National Bowling Stadium or in an exposition center or at the South Point Plaza, those buildings are so dialed in to tournament play that I'm not concerned about the temperature outside versus the temperature inside. I think what you see from the statistics is that a lot of our longtime customers who are good, or especially are good bowlers, they bowled the same time of the year every year. And our tournament is mostly busy, and you guys know this more than me statistically, from that April, May, June timeframe. In fact, we get busy sometimes at the end of the tournament when we add dates. Where we're not busy, or where a lot of new teams bowl, sometimes is early in the tournament. And those teams don't have as much experience. They haven't bowled the tournament as much. Maybe they're not the higher level bowler coming into bowl. And I think you naturally see the scoring pace start off slower just because the established teams who've had success don't bowl the tournament until April. In fact, we'll read your guys' shares on Facebook where, 1 year, I remember it was Tim Jans's crew from Wisconsin. They bowled early 1 year. And then Kurt Pelon's team, they just happened to bowl early in Syracuse, right? They bowled in March and shot this big number. And then there was this flatter like, oh my gosh, the lanes are so easy. Well, they won the tournament. So I think it depends on who bowls when, is my point. So I don't think the environmental, I don't put as much stock in the environmental factors at our facilities for these events as I would a commercial center.
So you've been in charge of lane pattern development for the OC since 2016. So look at the last 4 years. Your intentions versus your success rate. How happy have you been with those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we haven't had a miss yet. And in lane maintenance, that's amazing. I'm not patting myself on the back here. I'm saying that because our entries continue to rise. I'm saying that because our customers are continuing to bowl. And there's always a percentage of folks who don't agree, and that's fine. They may not come back, but our tournaments are growing again. So when I took over, I wanted to make sure we had integrity and process. We went through the processes, make sure the lanes were challenging. And I also wanted to create, at least initially, a little more of a difference in the patterns. So when we went to the two patterns, I thought they were a little close together to start with. And so the first year, if you pull up the graph, this is all public information, you'll see that the team event pattern in Las Vegas the first year compared to doubles and singles, the doubles and singles pattern was quite a bit different than what it had been before. And that pattern allowed the customer to play the outside part of the lane, which frankly sometimes had not been in play for years. So that was one change I've made that didn't, it's not like we're doing it that way every year, but that was one noticeable change, was making the patterns a little bit more differentiated so that you had two shots. Maybe you didn't bowl well in minors, but you really whacked them in team, or vice versa, giving them a little more variety.
So as the governing body, certainly we want the pattern integrity to help us bring out the best champions possible. Personally, how important is it to you to maybe, not only at the Open Championships level, but you've had a hand in U.S. and developing patterns for the U.S. Open, the Masters. How important is it that these players at these levels are challenged in order to win these prestigious events?
Very important. And it's not always the scoring pace. It's the mental part of the tournament. I'd say the U.S. Open this year, in Sun Valley, is a perfect example of that. Sometimes the pace is going to be higher than what the expectation is. And there's a variety of factors for why the U.S. Open scored very well the first 2 days. First of all, you probably have the top 100 out of 108 bowlers in the world bowling in this tournament on the same lanes. You have a good lane surface. You have pins that were put in 2 weeks prior in the perfect condition to carry. A lot of good scoring environmental factors. And then you have great bowlers. And they came out and bowled very well and good. I wasn't disappointed by that. Did they score a little higher than I thought? Sure. But you couldn't look at the leaderboard and go, oh, someone got lucky. But then, the market correction picked up in day 3. And frankly, that pattern played tougher than I thought it was going to play. So part of it is physical, bowling. Part of it is psychological. How do you get through that day? You struck for 2 days, right? Pretty well. And then you go on that and you bowl on that grind. Then you have to come back and bowl on the fourth pattern. So how do you handle that mentally? That's part of it for me, is the mental challenge. And you've seen at the U.S. Open that sometimes that flat pattern is the first day, right? And now this last year, it's the last day. So it's keeping folks on edge of not knowing what to expect is really important to me.
Well, and I like what you said there about that, because if you haven't bowled at that level, you don't understand that. Let's say the scoring pace is high. Players that aren't experienced just think, oh, they're just going to go out and strike and it's easy and there's no pressure. Well, there is pressure when the scoring pace is high and you ping a flat 10 and you just lost 21 pins.
I think it's even more magnified at the U.S. Open when you know the lanes are going to be hard. And if you're on C squad and B, and you watched A go out there and the 10 guys went, 200 over, that's pressure right there before you even bowl. And then the last day, if you're close to the cut or you bowl, to hang on and think about, man, if I could just average 190, I could make it. That's, as you guys know, it's very difficult to bowl defensive. As soon as you start doing that, it doesn't work out well. So again, every event's different, but to me, I want to make the bowler think, not just play. I call it golden tee bowling, where you see the arrows on the lane and you switch your ball and you just operate. I want people to think and operate.
All right, before I throw it to Matt for his thoughts, I got one more question about a lane play, not lane play, but oil patterns. I'm going to go back to 2013, the Kentucky Open. John McCarthy, who was our tournament director for that event, reached out to you to develop the patterns. For those of you that don't know, the Kentucky Open, we run basically a short, a medium, and a long, 2 or 3 6-game blocks, Friday, Saturday night, and then basically a flat pattern on Sunday for the finals. And they played very tough, as I knew they would with you developing the patterns. But the short pattern, and for all of us that watch bowling, we know the short patterns, we know that they play on the gutter. Well, the house that it was in, it played on fourth arrow, and the leader of the block was plus 58 for 6 games. So not even 210 in a pretty talented field. What happens when a pattern misses like that? Because we all agreed after the event, the competitors, that the scores were a lot lower than we expected, which was fine, but that short pattern was brutal. So what happens when a pattern, not that pattern in particular, but a pattern misses? What went wrong?
Yes. Oh, now I've had a little time to think about it. First, I'll say that I love John McCarthy, and his directive to me is that he wanted them as hard as I could make them. And so intentionally, the short pattern was put out in a facility that wouldn't allow a short pattern to play. And so sometimes if you want them hard, what you do is you use the lane surface to your advantage with a pattern that doesn't work. And then you get the short pattern playing at the fourth arrow. Again, what does the customer want? In that situation, we want them hard. So what happens though when that result is not anticipated for me? Right. I got to look myself in the eye. I'm the one responsible for this. And so you got to kind of go back and go through your process and, what went wrong? How did I miss this bad? A perfect example for me was the U.S. Open at Syracuse in 18, I think it was 18, the last year before we went to oiling every squad. And we know that doing a double burn is risky with today's technology, but we had done well with it the first 2 years. We didn't have issues in Garland or in Vegas. And the lesson I learned from that was, Daniel, guys like you and I, we grew up either playing the gutter or we're comfortable playing the gutter. And today's power players that are trying to create maximum angle to score, they didn't grow up in that environment. And so the lesson was, if the gutter is going to play, it needs to look like it needs to play. It can't be like, if you're comfortable, play it, and if you're not, then play in. It needs to be very noticeable that the gutter is the place to play. And if not, the tour player in the U.S. Open is going to go where they can strike. That is what they're paid to do. And in that situation, they all went left, and we had just incredible lofting, and truly probably the worst tournament that I've had in my career is from just missing. And I'm honest about it. I don't hide it. I clearly missed on that one.
Sorry, Matt, I do have one follow-up to that before I throw it to you. We listen to bowling fans. They talk about that lofting the ball is not bowling. It's not a sport. And I don't want to get into that because that's a whole different discussion about what people think about lofting, whether it is good or bad. But as a lane pattern developer, why can't you just throw 40 units of oil on the lane instead of the 27 to 30 that we typically see at most events? Why can't you just flood the lane for 40 feet and force these guys to not loft the ball?
Yeah, great question. First of all, there is a thing that's putting too much oil in the lane, because you're just going to increase the amount of surface that guys are going to put on the ball, and you're going to have the adverse effect. Secondly, I think lofting's part of the game. I don't particularly love it, but it is what it is. I just don't want to see it in the second game of qualifying in an 8-game block. I think that's a mistake from the pattern developer, because we should be able to migrate to that point. And I'm fine with them at the end of the block doing it. I'm fine with those guys in college doing it at the end of the block. I just don't want to see it halfway down the lane. That's when you know there's been a mistake made, like what I did at the U.S. Open in 18. There needed to be a different pattern put on the lanes.
Okay, Matt?
Definitely all good stuff. And as we shift gears back to the Open Championship specifically, you mentioned earlier kind of some of the thought process that goes into developing the oil patterns for the OC. It's not just a one-man show. There's a lot of discussion that takes place both after the previous event, before the next event, internally, as far as goals and ideas and things, listening to feedback of the bowlers, the surveys, of course. The bowlers who bowled well are going to have positive feedback. The bowlers who didn't are going to have some negative feedback. But I think the majority of the bowlers are going to be in that middle section where they know they didn't bowl well compared to their league averages, and there's room for improvement. There's some discouragement, of course, but the biggest thing I think that we need to convey so everyone understands is that it is a national championship. Of course, the goal is that it's going to be more challenging than what you might be used to at home. So you should know that right off the bat going in, but not impossible. And the goal for you guys is a very fine line. You want to have it to where those patterns are going to play fairly to both sides of the lane. You have bowlers of all ages and skill levels. We have 3 divisions that are average based. So many different factors go in. But the key points to hit, of course, are first that it will be more challenging than you'll see at home, but there are ways to prepare, which we'll get to. You have to make good shots and be accurate, and you have to make your spares. And those are consistent for every division, every player, and these are things that you can work on. But of all those factors, to get it to where you can attack the lanes from different angles, from both sides, regardless of rev rate or how you throw it necessarily, that's a huge challenge for you. And it's something you said you've been in the window the last few years that you'd like to be in. Just to explain, the importance of all of those things and how you get to the point that you get to.
Yeah, no, great question. I think I'll work off 2018 and 2019. So 2018 in Syracuse, we had a new build with new lanes. And, these lanes, when they come out of the factory with the matte finish, they just play really tight. And also you have to remember, we're stripping and oiling each lane 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. Those lanes are spotless. And so I think the patterns that year were a little longer. They might have been 40 for team and 42 for doubles and singles. And I think the volumes might have been higher. And overall, from ball reaction, I think they played tight. And so we had customers that said they were tight, which is fine. And then the next year in Las Vegas, which has a surface that just hooks more, I think I ran them a little shorter. Maybe it was 39 or 38 feet and maybe 41 feet instead of 42. You have to look at the graphs, but we made them hook more. So overall, definitely made an adjustment from one year they played a little tighter, one year they hooked a little bit more. One of my favorite conversations I've ever had is I had one with a really good bowler who asked me, hey, now the tournament's over, Nick, where would you have told me is the ideal place to start to score? And I said, nowhere. And they know what I meant. And I said, that pattern is designed so that you could only hit it 2 out of 3 games. And so if you wanted to start in a little bit further, you might have had a little bit of an advantage. I'm talking about the Syracuse team event. But you're going to run out of real estate by the time you get to game 3. And you're going to start placking 10s, and you're not going to get the third game bump. Or if you stay a little bit further right, in practice, they're going to be harder. You're probably going to struggle the first game, but then they're probably going to be nicer for the second two. So my point is, there is no exact strategy of how to perfectly play the lane. It always evolves. The lanes change throughout the course of the block. And you think about the math, I think 3250 is winning our team events for the last few years. That is 650 a man to win. And so you think about the math and go, man, can I get me and my buddies to both bowl 650 and we could win an eagle? So there's no, once the pattern's done, it's up to the bowler to determine how they're going to carve it up and how they're going to succeed. My goal is to make sure that there's some options out there to play.
Okay. And to challenge the players, of course, we talked about that again. I think we'd have a different extreme if it was more of the house shot type patterns that they're used to at home. It certainly, there would be some intimidating numbers on the leaderboards. And as you said, 650, that seems doable. When you walk in, you see 3,200, 3,300 up there. Those numbers are doable if everything falls into place, in which it's the national championship event. It's going to take a career day. Things are going to have to fall into place and go your way. But you have to earn it. That's the biggest thing. We're not trying to embarrass anybody, but there's a little bit more preparation and accuracy and just hard work involved. And if you prepare, certainly you will be rewarded.
Yeah, and I think that we've hopefully been able to provide every customer the opportunity to actually bowl on the patterns before they bowl in the OC. And we do that now through team practice sessions and through the Bowlers Journal Championships, where you can, for a fee, you can pay to practice on the team event pattern for an hour, or bowl 3 games on the Bowlers Journal, which is on the minors pattern. And in a situation this year where we're at the stadium, where we're in the same bay of lanes, you're really bowling on the exact patterns with the exact lane machine. So if really getting a look at that pattern is important to you in your preparation, for some it is, then you have the ability now to go and get time on the lanes, on the pattern before you bowl, which years past you never had that opportunity. And I think that's much more valuable to me as a competitor than looking at a piece of paper.
We had, I want to get to something real quick. We had Dan Higgins on last week, team captain of Higgins Aquarium, who won the regular team championship last year in Las Vegas. And he said that, he goes, a team that comes out and is on fire game one, we know instantly they're not going to do anything. They're not going to catch our number. The top 5 teams from last year, the lowest game one number came from Higgins Aquarium. They shot 1033. The other 4 teams were in the 1070s and 1080s. After shooting 1030, they went 1159, 1170.
Right.
Only 3 teams in the top 100 broke 1100 game one. One of those teams shot 1220. Right. I remember Bad Ball Red, 1220. They don't break 1,000 the next 2. The other 2 teams that broke 1100 the first game, they didn't finish top 30. So to your point, to Dan's point, you got to be nice game one, and then you're going to hit them games 2 and 3, or the ability to hit them.
And I think that's part of the pattern design process is, there has to be strategy in winning this. And so the teams that win it are thinking about those things at a high level. And, it's our job to continually challenge them to make sure that, we're creating a cool environment for them to compete in.
Now, as a bowler, as I get ready for the Open Championships again, if I've been there, I know it's going to be a little bit more challenging for me. And I also know, and for those who don't know, we do not publish the oil patterns until the event is over. And that will be, in this case, at the end of November, as of right now. But there are ways to prepare. You already mentioned the team practice sessions inside the venue, which will be on the team oil pattern, and then the Bowlers Journal Championships on the doubles and singles pattern. But as you said earlier, the patterns haven't changed all that much over the last few years. And they're still going to be tougher than what you might be used to in league anyway. So that's a great opportunity. Even if you can't get the exact pattern from this year, it's possible to utilize the patterns from previous years just to help yourself get sharp, get a little more accurate, and work on those spares when the lane isn't giving you maybe as much flexibility as it would in your league. And a lot of folks, they talk about the lane machines in their houses, and there's ways. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit of the different strategies in preparing, whether utilizing previous patterns or the on-site opportunities a little bit more?
Yeah, if you want to practice on championship conditions before you come to the OC, then yeah, a couple of things. One, put out last year's patterns. That's a great starting place. If you really want to get tough, put out the flat U.S. Open pattern. If you want to get sharp, bowl on pattern 3 from the 2020 U.S. Open for 4 weeks. That'll get you sharp on your spare game for sure. The thing that sold me on, a couple of things that sold me on not being bothered by the pattern not being posted, because as you guys know, depending on the event, we sometimes post before or after. It's before I started doing this job with USBC, I still bowled competitively with my OC teams, right? And so we'd get the pattern. And if anyone is going to be able to dial that pattern in for my home center, it's going to be me. And what I learned was, even with trying to trick the lane machine, because our lane machine was different, because our oil was different, because our topography was different, because our lane surface was different, because our humidity was different, all those variables, with my expertise, I still couldn't get them anywhere close to what we actually bowled on from a ball reaction standpoint. And I think the message is that the environment's so unique that you just need to practice on tough, challenging patterns to get an idea that you're going to have to make your spares mentally. You're going to have to keep the ball in play mentally. You're never going to be able to replicate exactly the environment at home, no matter what center you're in, versus the OC. So the best way to actually compete on the OC patterns is to do the bowler's journal in the team practice. But, as a historical nugget, guys, been doing this for a while, I'd have local bowlers come back from the OC. This is when we were posting the pattern, and just be really, really distraught and say, Nick, we talked about the pattern before I went. We bowled on it out here. I went and drilled 4 new balls. And when I left, my facility, Western Bowl, I was striking. And I went out there and the lanes are totally different. Mm-hmm. And man, we heard that a lot from our customers, where, different lane surface at home, different oil, different machine. All of a sudden they're drilling 2 balls to bring to the OC and the lanes aren't playing the same. They come home and go, the pro shop operator, hey, those balls didn't work. Or to the proprietor, hey, why aren't the lanes the same here as they were out there? It just created a lot of problems, and people getting sort of false senses of hope before they go bowl. So I think the best way to do it is to bowl on last year's patterns, bowl in the U.S. Open pattern, or take advantage of the opportunities to bowl on the actual patterns in the facility.
We certainly don't want to discourage anybody. This, of course, is a sensitive topic. Again, somebody's going to bowl well. Somebody's going to win. We all hope it's us each year that we go out there. We prepare. It's different from year to year. Each year is a new time, a new opportunity for that. And, aside from the competitive aspect of it, you mentioned it earlier, when we started out, some of the memories that you have are not score related. You happen to have been fortunate and won an Eagle early in your career. But you said that also some of the best memories and the best years you've had were recently. Some of the pressure's off now that your scores don't technically count towards Eagles and prize money, but you're out there bowling with friends and having a good time and enjoying what the OC experience is, which is more than just 9 games of bowling, and that's important as well.
Yeah, I'm just turned 42 and have 2 kids, 3 and 7, and a wife, full-time job and responsibilities that I didn't have when I was 22. And, as I've gotten older, like a lot of folks do, that, you don't spend as much time with your friends or your boys, the guys you bowl with. I don't bowl league anymore. I just don't have time today. And so whenever I'd go to the OC, it was just a time to reconnect with those friends over, I've had lifelong relationships with. So it stopped. It became more about the social experience and about continuing a streak and hanging with my friends for 2 or 3 days than it did about making the bracket money and winning the Eagle, frankly. And so I think our customers go through all different iterations of what the Open Championship means to them. And, whether the lanes are hard or not, or we post a pattern or not, I think you see in our, customer survey results that they're just delighted to be able to come bowl with their friends and family through generations, getting to go to some great cities and great facilities. And, we're there to compete, and I hope I bowl well, and I hope I make some money in the tournament and in the brackets. But at the end of the day, I'm coming because I love to bowl. That to me is where I'm at in my career, to where now I bowl with the open, the USBC teams when I bowl with people I don't even know. And some of them are their first time bowling the OC and have 110 average. And I could care less. It's great. It's fun. So I think it just depends on where you're at in your competitive career, what the tournament means to you. If that makes sense.
When it's all done each year, some folks are going to love you and want to send you a thank you card. Some folks are going to be very upset with you and hope that they never had the opportunity to have a conversation with you. But we certainly do what we can, to prepare. And you mentioned transparency earlier. Bowl.com/OpenChamp has all the details about the procedures as far as how the lanes are maintained each day, who the 5 people are in the world who know what the oil pattern is before the event is over. And none of those 5 people are competing for Eagles and prize money. Right. And then just each step in the process, the checklists are all there, the topography, the details of the center, the lane surface, the type of pins, the machines, really everything but the oil pattern is there until the end of the event. And then you can go back and check that information for years past as well. And of all people, Nick, you want people to succeed and have a good time at the Open Championships. And it's a very challenging world for you because the field at the event is so diverse. Mm-hmm. And it's different, of course, than when you're doing lanes for the PWBA Tour. You have 14 events throughout the season, and you want to have a different challenge each week there. Or what I think you're probably most famous for, at least in the collegiate world, is your work at the Hoosier Classic. And that's arguably one of the most prestigious but most challenging events of the year as well. I guess just to sum it up, I mean, you are the lane maintenance, lane pattern guy for all of our USBC events. So you really have to think through, again, who's at that event, what the bowling center is, what the goals are. PWBA is its own challenge, collegiately a whole nother challenge. But maybe talk about just some of the thought process and generalities there, and maybe some of the more fun type of oil patterns that you've had the opportunity to design.
Yeah, I mean, however the lanes turn out, it's all based on what the customer wants. And, the customer is USBC for USBC events, or, it's PWBA for PWBA events. For the Hoosier Classic, it's college coaches who have made no bones about it. They want the lanes hard. And so if you just kind of keep to that North Star of what your customer is looking for, then all the other noise, like if someone doesn't like you or you're not being transparent enough, that to me goes by the wayside. The goal is that they need to trust you and trust the process, right? And so at the Open Championship specifically, I can tell you, yeah, the pattern's not posted, and that's going to give heartburn to some, and I understand why. But I can prove to every bowler that they've bowled on the correct pattern, which is a lot different than posting a pattern that says it's 42 feet and the machine not running correctly or running the wrong pattern, and you have no idea that happened. That doesn't seem like integrity to me. Proving checks and balances process that we're running the right pattern seems the most important. As far as the Hoosier Classic, in college, I'd say, first of all, that I've been blessed to work with the Kegel Company for over 20 years. I first had experience with them in 1997 or 98 and got to intern there in the late 90s and really got shown the ropes by the 3 Johns, 2 of which are not with us anymore. John Davis, the owner, John Forst, who was one of their chief guys, and John Janowitz, who's a USBC Hall of Famer. I got to learn the ropes of lane maintenance from them. And they've been an integral part of my life in bowling, an integral part of the USBC's success for a long time. So I've taken my bowling experience and how I bowled, my technical experience from what I learned at Kegel, and then applied it with my business experience, which is that you got to delight your customer to do these patterns. And at the Hoosier Classic, they want them hard. And so we kind of get crazy sometimes with them, and we'll even get crazy with them at ITCs because the customer's okay with it. Putting the Space Needle pattern on lane probably isn't going to happen at the women's championships, right? Let's just be honest. It was more likely to happen at a PWBA event, perhaps, where we're changing the pattern 14 times during the year, or at the ITCs where the customer has said, hey, we're okay with this. So again, it's blending all that stuff together, and also not taking it personal when someone says that they don't like you. I frankly just don't care.
All right. Well, Nick, you've experienced the Open Championships from every perspective now. You mentioned earlier some of your advice to the bowlers as far as preparing and attacking the lanes each year. But if you could combine your competitive experience with your professional experience and just give a summary, a small tidbit of advice for maybe the first timer or maybe the long timer just looking to have a career year. What's it going to take?
It's Len Nicholson telling me when I first got started in lane maintenance that you got to let your ball be your guide. And so if you sit there and think about it, what that means is that you don't need the graph. We bowled without the graph for a long time, and you should really go into the tournament with an open mind. That doesn't mean don't prepare. So if you're going to go bowl the OC, go bowl on last year's patterns, but don't go in with this preconceived notion that I'm going to play the first arrow or the second arrow because Jimmy in my league told me they're hooking this year. Go in and watch, right? Go in and watch people bowl, see where they're playing on the lanes, and go in with an open mind of how you should bowl in a tournament. So when I bowl, I don't bowl that much anymore, but when I bowl a tournament now, I don't ever look at the graph, even if the graph's there. I've kind of gone back old school myself where I'm so into the technical part where if they say they're running a 36-foot gutter pattern and it hangs on the gutter, I go, well, something's wrong with the machine. Just need to bowl what's out there. So take your balls, go practice, throw 3 shots down, 10, see what happens, move into 15, try the lane out, and you just need to keep an open mind as to what the oil pattern is. That's the best advice I can give. And to be frank, my experience on the tour, the best bowlers on the pre-BA tour when I was out there were the guys that were the least concerned about the oil patterns. They went out, they threw the ball, they struck, they came back, and they went home. That's what they did. They didn't get into all the minutia. So that was a big learning for me.
I do like that. Let your ball be the guide and be open-minded, of course. Just move off of what you're seeing. And I think that's the safest route. And, of course, especially at the OC, you want to realize you're not bowling against your league average at that point. You're bowling against the folks around you, all the other folks at the event, and even you can compare yourself to previous years at the OC if you'd like. But definitely to compare to what you do at home, that's a recipe for disappointment, of course. But it's all relative, and it's all some very good information.
Yeah, Nick, to your previous point, one of my favorite people my favorite person in any bowling tournament is the guy who's, 200 pins behind the leader and complaining because the graph said he should play boards XYZ and no one's playing XYZ because the pattern's on ABC, but he's still playing what the graph told him. That's my favorite bowler. I love that guy.
You just gotta. Sometimes the graph is the excuse vehicle for not performing well, and we're all built and wired differently. So sometimes we're also embarrassed by how we bowl, and that becomes an excuse. I just say, just go in with an open mind. I can tell you when I bowled last year in the OC in Vegas, and I bowled with my friends. Right, I actually bowled twice. I bowled team event opening night, and I came back and bowled with my buddies, just doubles and singles, and my buddies didn't count, right? And I went and bowled doubles and singles, and I had a preconceived notion of where I should play the lanes, and I was like 3 left from the start of where, and I'm the guy who designed the pattern.
I was going to say, it.
And I'm like, yeah, for whatever reason, right, that pair topography was different. It was a little tighter. Maybe we had some surface. I don't know. But even me, as the guy who should know where to play, I even didn't play the lanes, where my preconceived notion was. It took me 3 frames to go, wait a second. And then I figured it out, and just kind of watched the ball reaction and moved and, bowled okay. So, yeah, it's just a reaffirming that you should just watch your ball go down the lane.
All right. Now, Nick, outside of the Eagle year, You still had a 21-year career at the Open Championships. You've bowled with some fun guys over the years, and we've seen you come through and really enjoying all that the OC has to offer. Not again just the 9 games of bowling. Do you have any moments or any favorite cities that stand out? You guys certainly take advantage of the host city, the nearby establishments, the restaurants and such. But anything stand out specifically, and anything in Reno that you're most looking forward to getting back to once you get into town this year?
I love Reno. I do. I'm not just saying that. I know where to go. As a logistics person by trade, their economy's booming in city with logistics. I'm very familiar with that. What we like to do, this is before I started to work for the USBC. When I still bowled, we'd take usually 1 or 2 new guys from Indianapolis that would go with us, younger guys, and we would bowl and razz them, but then we'd take them out to a nice dinner at some nice restaurant and just do it right for them, right? Just to make them have a great experience, like buy them a steak they'd never have. So I always enjoyed doing that. I've also got to bowl in the early 2000s with Keith Hamilton, Ron Wood, and Ed Bauer, and sort of like that old school bowling team was really cool to bowl with. And recently, I got to bowl opening night last year on a team with Chad and Gus Falgen, who's the VP at Kegel, and a bunch of industry people that bowled. And then we just had a blast. And I just remember, just analyzing the lanes all night with Chad, because the first time anyone's seen the pattern on the lanes and bowling on it. And Gus and I razzing each other about bowling. When you're at this stage of your career, at least for me today, the social part of the tournaments is what I enjoy.
All right, now, Daniel, I knew coming in that you were going to really enjoy this lane talk, the lane patterns. We've had a chance to talk to champions and Hall of Famers and hear more of the technological things. And this was kind of an all-in-one podcast for us. Any final thoughts or questions? I know that when you see Nick in person, you're going to have a million more things and stories and no doubt. But anything to kind of wrap things up here for our OC podcast viewers?
I do have one question for you, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to run an 8-game sweep, hypothetical. I'm going to run an 8-game sweeper. 8 games, crossing pairs. I call you. You can run any pattern you want. Any tricks in the pattern you want, whatever you want to do. The surface is AMF HPL's, higher friction surface. What kind of pattern, if you could use all of your creativity, what would you put out if you had 100% power carte blanche?
Well, I'd ask you, what are you looking for? I mean, you're
The
the customer. So you want them hard? What's tough for you? What's defined me tough?
Give me a plus 80 for 8 games, 210 average.
So
win.
you want me to bring out the magic wand and somehow design a pattern at a bowling center that I've never bowled in with customers that I don't know to get to a magic score of plus 80? Is that what you're?
Yep.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. Is that what you're asking me to do?
Let's go Western Bowl in Indianapolis.
Okay. All right. It's a little better. So the reason why I ask you those questions is because all that goes into the design of the pattern. I'd have to say recently the patterns that I like the best. I love the pattern we did for the U.S. Open in Garland in 15, which we still use that template today. Mm-hmm. That pattern, I think I first used it at the Hoosier Classic probably in 2013. It had been in development for a while. I love the fact that it looks different on the graph, first of all, and the gutter plays, but you can still play in. So you have like a dead zone between, I'd call it 7 and 15, where you can't play on the fresh. You're going to probably 2, 8, 10 if you throw it right. I love that pattern just because it's just different and it's been successful. Mm-hmm. The other pattern I really like today is you'd call it U.S. Open Pattern 4 this year, which was the first time we used that sort of template was in the Masters in Syracuse. And that's really tough, flat, but it has an kind of an offset in the reverse. So I like those 2 patterns would be the ones. If I wanted the gutter to play, I'd use that U.S. Open one. Uh-huh. If I wanted to not have the gutter be as good a look, I'd use that 2018 Masters pattern.
Okay.
For you, you need the gutter pattern, Daniel.
Give me Garland. Yes, absolutely.
So, not that I don't appreciate the bowling talk and the challenge of lane patterns, but I would much rather hang out with the steak dinner, Nick. To be honest, Nick, if we had to go and have one last dinner in Reno, where are we going? And we can talk about lane patterns as long as you feed me. I'm cool with that.
I would pick at the Tri Properties. I like going to the Italian restaurant in the El Dorado. I forget the name of it, but there's an Italian restaurant in the back.
Lestrada.
Lestrada.
Yes,
Lestrada.
Shocker that's yeah.
I'm definitely going to Lestrada. If I'm going for steak, I'm going. I also like the Charlie Palmer Steakhouse at the Grand Sierra Resort, home of the Masters. So I'd probably do. Matt, we just do double dinner. We just do both.
Fine with me. I'm in. I'll make the reservations. Just let me know when we're gonna be there.
Yeah.
But folks, that's coming up in September, by the way. Now I'm hungry right now. But Nick, we do appreciate you coming on and giving some insight into the world of lane maintenance, especially at the OC. Hopefully, opening some eyes and answering some questions for our bowlers. And we look forward to what you have in store for us in 2020. The event scheduled to kick off September 12th and run until November 22nd will be our final doubles and singles squad. Nick, any final thoughts for our viewers and our bowlers before we head out?
No, just thank you for this opportunity, but also thank Aaron, Daniel, Matt, Emil, all you guys that are the road warriors out covering these events to provide bowling with visibility. Thank you for doing that. One of the great joys of any tournament for me is when I get a text from one of you asking me a question about something you're seeing, and I'm able to provide some nugget back to you on a text message that then you guys put in the chat. That way we're educating people. So great job with all that you do, and thank you for all your hard work.
Well, we appreciate the kind words.
Thank you.
All of your hard work. And Daniel, I know you're itching to get out there and bowl right now, or design a tournament format of some sort. Any final thoughts for the viewers today?
No, I think Nick, you provided some great insight, not only into your history before being a lane pattern guru, but certainly into what goes on at the Open Championships. Hopefully, if anyone entered this podcast with questions or a curiosity about how things are charted and cataloged and the procedure, I'm hoping this answered some of those questions, provided some clarity, some transparency, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you've put out on the lanes or what you're going to put out on the lanes for us coming up in September. Yeah,
I hope we all get to bowl, and so we all need to keep our social distancing and take that so that we can all get back on the lanes.
Yes.
All right, folks, one last time for all your information about the oil patterns and the lane maintenance procedures at the Open Championships, it's bowl.com/openchamp, and in the right-hand menu, there'll be a link to the lane maintenance and topography reports, all the details, all the patterns from recent years. So check that out. Again, if you have any questions, you know where to find us on social media. And that is going to do it for today. First, before we go, of course, we want to thank Kegel, the official lane maintenance provider for all USBC championship events. Without them and their great lane machines and products, none of what Nick does would even be possible. So thanks to Kegel and all the folks there. And for the rest of us, that's the news for now. My name is Matt Cannizzaro, Daniel Farish, and Nick Hoagland. See you on the lanes.